Hi, I'm Amanda Morgan from NotJustCute.com, and I am here one more time with Heather Shumaker, the author of It's Okay Not to Share. It's been a read-along this book, a fantastic book that I would highly recommend to all parents or professionals who work with young children. So I'm glad to see you again, Heather, and I don't want to say this is our last chat because I'm excited about some future projects that we'll talk about in just a moment. But for this wrap-up session, we wanted to talk about that last section of the book and just kind of some overall perceptions about the book, and as I alluded, some other projects that Heather's working on that I'm excited to learn about here. So first off, Heather, I want to ask you about your tips for starting out. We've read all year about these Renegade rules and these great perspectives that you share in your book. So if someone has read the entire book, or someone who's just new to this discussion right now and is getting the snippets from our summaries and our discussions, what do you suggest for them to get started? You know, it can be really overwhelming to read this whole book that's based on years of research and years of experience, the people that you tap into. Where does somebody start if they're just, this is all new to them?
Right. Well, I wanted to make sure people wouldn't feel overwhelmed, because if it is all new, you can only bite off one little bit at a time. So, don't think, oh my gosh, there's so much I need to change. Just try one thing and see how it works. And what I recommend people try first is the taking turns. So giving kids long turns with an object when it's playtime. And that doesn't mean screens, but other types of toys. So with taking turns, kids, the reason to choose that one might be just because kids get it. It's very simple. Let them finish using something. When they're done, tell the next person who's waiting, or make a sign and say, so-and-so gets it when I'm done. And kids as young as 2 can get it. So it's very easy to implement, and they like it, they feel it's fair, and kids have a keen sense of justice. So that's a good place to start for a lot of people.
I found that when I was teaching, I did something similar. I think I learned even more reading your section in the book, but when I was teaching in preschool and sharing was an issue and turn taking, and we did something my philosophy that I adopted was very similar, teaching them that they need to ask for a turn when someone's done rather than give it to me now. And it really was like magic. Like you said, the kids just get it. It makes sense to them, and it's just better for everybody, in addition to being better, as you mentioned, from a child development perspective and the reasons behind that. But it like you said, the kids really do get it, this idea that we take turns when people are done. We ask for a turn when people are done, and that it's okay to take a long turn, because that's part of playing. That's part of how it's meant to be.
I think another thing with that is it builds up trust and confidence. So as a parent or as an adult, it builds up your confidence that, yeah, these zany ideas might really work, and give you some freedom from always intervening as a referee constantly. And for the kids, it builds this enormous trust in you as an adult that you're going to start treating them a little differently. Maybe a little more what I would call respectfully, but that you understand them a little better. And the kids pick up on that, and they'll start showing you that respect in other ways. Not every moment of the day, but taking turns as a first step really can help build trust and confidence on both sides.
And I think that's an overarching perspective as well. One of the benefits of this book, that you really do such a great job of entrusting children, giving them an appropriate amount of power, which, like you said, does great things for them. It does great things for your relationship, and it just in and of itself can help with a lot of the struggles that parents and teachers face. But I love that so much of the book you work in this, what I find is a very developmentally appropriate perspective of childhood, and I really, really appreciate that. So that's a great place to start, is with learning, helping them to share and to take long turns, and the right approach, the healthy approach to sharing and taking turns. I love also that you mentioned just going back to the Renegade Golden Rule can be a helpful place to start. Do you mind explaining that for people who might not have learned about that yet?
I think it's hard to remember what are you supposed to do in certain circumstances. So there's this rule to fall back on that I call the Renegade Golden Rule, is just to remember it's okay if it's not hurting people or property. So if you wonder if what your child is doing at this moment is okay, or should you let them do it, should you set a limit, what's going on, think to yourself, is it hurting people or property? And if it's not, well, maybe you need to send them outside to do it, or change something. But find a way to say yes to the activity or the feeling. And I think the Renegade Golden Rule also goes along with another really essential one, that all feelings are okay, but all behavior isn't. And if you take those two together, that means so much to how we interact with kids, because again, you need to set limits on, you can't let them hit you, you can't let them kick the cat, but you can let them feel mad and want to kick. And so you're setting limits on one thing, but not on the underlying emotion. And with those two rules together, if you can't remember anything else, if you can remember those two, all feelings are okay, and if it's not hurting people or property, it's all right, then you'll go really far.
I agree. I think those two right there, that sums up a lot of my philosophy and a lot of what I've learned from your book. I really think it sums up. And I think when you talk about does it hurt people or property, I think one misconception that maybe I've seen in some application, I've heard people kind of use that type of a reference, but I think it's important to remember that when we talk about it doesn't hurt people, that includes their feelings. And you talk about in the book, it's not just does it physically hurt people, but does it make people uncomfortable? Does it, hurt their feelings? It's one that I've used. I love your section on, because I have all boys. It really applies to them about, letting them role play with, my boys love to play with guns, and I've loved, not real guns obviously, they love to play with their Nerf guns and things, and I've loved the verbiage that you share in that section about talking about how whether other people want to play that way and whether or not other people feel safe. And so I think it goes back to that, is it hurting people or property? That people part can mean not just does it physically hurt them, but do they feel safe? Do they feel comfortable? Do they like this? And I think that's a little, maybe a misconception that I've seen sometimes when people say, well, it doesn't hurt anybody. We have to remember to take their feelings into consideration, and the feeling of safety is important for them as well.
Because actually, one of the chapters, when I wrote this book, it was my first book, and when I wrote it, it was way too long. And so we got to the end part, and the editor looked at me, and it was just too long. And so we chopped out a lot of words, and we chopped out 3 entire chapters. And one of the chapters that we took out of this book was one about mean words. So what you just brought up about it, so it's not okay to hurt people. That includes feelings and words. So I have a whole chapter about teasing and mean words and what to do about that. And some people were saying, well, that's more of the girl issue. It's not necessarily. But there's a lot of, you can't come to my birthday party, or I'm not going to be your friend anymore. That kind of relationship aggression, which comes out in boys too, but it was a little bit more on the girl side. And so that chapter has been restored in the new book, and I have a sequel coming out next year that has a whole chapter on mean words. And yeah, it's not okay to hurt the feelings. But that you can't just shut that down, because if somebody's saying something, I won't be your friend, you're ugly, whatever those things are, again, it's a conflict. A chance, it's an opportunity to practice conflict mediation and to find out what the feelings are. You sound mad. What did she do that you didn't like? You're saying that because you're feeling mad, and it's just like any old conflict. But sometimes we feel it's harder to cope with because it's words. How do you stop someone from talking? We can stop them from kicking because they're little. How do you stop them from talking? But it's really just the same kind of conflict coming out in a different way.
I love that perspective, that idea that conflict isn't something to be avoided. I mean, we obviously want to keep a healthy level, but that it's an opportunity, like you said, to teach and to help these kids learn their own skills of conflict mediation and getting along socially. I love that perspective that runs through the whole book. So as we talk about somebody who's trying to take on these new Renegade rules, and there's a list of the rules, it's such a great perspective, and as you summed up in those 2 perspectives, a great way to overarch all of those rules. But if somebody's starting out, and as you say, these renegade rules, and they're feeling like they're going rogue as a parent, you talk in this last section about parenting in public and being worried about other people's perceptions at the playground, at family, at friends. Mm-hmm. Can you talk just a little bit about how when you're feeling self-conscious about being a renegade or going rogue, how you deal with that, how you find the right balance, and then I know we wanted to talk especially about, especially this time of year, how you merge that with your family get-togethers, so that maybe you have a different parenting philosophy and perspective than the rest of your family.
Right. Yeah, it's fine to say, let's do it this way with you and your parenting partner, whoever that may be, but if you're just going out to the playground or going somewhere public, it's different. And I think that we can't underestimate how hard it is to be under all those judging eyes, especially if we're doing something a little bit different than what other people may be doing. First, recognize that family cultures are different no matter what you're doing. You're going to be a little bit different than everybody else. And we just have to accept that and have some, acknowledge it and have some courage. I think it helps to practice some of these things at home so that you and your child or you and your children have a sense of how some of these renegade rules might go on your home turf. Nobody's watching, the door's closed, just you and your 4-year-old or you and whoever working some of these things out so that you practice, feel a little bit comfortable before you do them out under judging eyes, because we tend to fall apart as adults when too many people we think.
So true.
Yes. But once you've got a little bit of it practiced at home, go ahead and try it in public. And one thing also I find we may have to modify. For example, and this is going to be up to each individual family, but for our family, we will have long turns at home, lots and lots of opportunity. When we go to, say, a children's museum where it's just crowded and there's one bubble machine and everybody wants to use it, I just make an announcement ahead of time and say, at home we can take long turns. There's lots of kids here today. Today you can take a short turn and they get back in line. And they understand. That helps them develop this awareness. Oh, other people exist in the world. It helps them develop awareness that different places have different rules. So I think it's okay to modify any of your parenting strategies that work at home in a public space, if that's the most respectful thing to do to the people around you. But there's other times where I do almost the same thing in public. So if we're at the grocery store and one of my kids is having a strong emotion, being mad or sad or something, I would parent that the same way I do at home. But a tip that I use is I will say it out loud. I'll say what I'm doing out loud. It's partly for the child's benefit, but it's partly for the adults around me, so they understand that she may not know what she's doing, has a plan. Right. So that they aren't worried or, because a lot of people will come by and say, oh, don't cry, or they'll try to make it better when actually everything's fine.
Right. They're just having an emotion. And I love that you have this type of flexibility that you talk about. In fact, you have a mantra. Well, for me, I want to make it a mantra. There was just a quote in there that said, just do the best that you can as much as you can. I may have messed up the wording there, but I just love that attitude that it's not, these renegade rules aren't, this make or break thing. These are just good practice, and you just do the best that you can as often as you can, and that's really all that we can ask of ourselves as parents in general. I wanted to ask you a little bit, and I know this kind of moves into some things that you cover in your second book, which I'm really excited about. Would love to have you tell us more about that. As people are going into this holiday season, and there are a lot of get-togethers with families, and it's hard on adults, and it's hard on kids, sometimes just all these extra bodies and interactions and cultures clashing and people and different expectations between families. Can you talk a little bit about some of those pressures that families have as they get together with family, and how to deal with that stress and with holding to your own parenting perspective in a healthy way as families get together?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one thing is to set some expectations on all sides. And in some families, this may not be relevant, but if you're in a family where you think there may be some things coming up, then try to set some expectations. Here's one, for example, and this one's covered in my new book, which is a chapter, It's Okay Not to Kiss Grandma. So you think about all the families getting together at the holidays, and these grandparents, often who live quite a ways away, are going to try to hug and kiss the kids and have expectations when they meet them about greetings and manners and hug me back and kiss me back. So there's a just set of expectations, for example, that families can work on, is to tell the grandparents ahead of time, Jack is nervous around new people. He hasn't seen you in 6 months, and so he'll take a little while to warm up, and he doesn't like kisses right now. but he's good at shaking hands. So then Grandma's not disappointed that Jack runs under the sofa and hides when she comes.
Not so personal.
You know, it doesn't take offense at it because there's some setting of expectation. And then to the child, you can say, Grandma loves to give big hugs and kisses. And if he's not into that right now, to go over what you can do, and you don't have to, and let him know it's your body. You get hugged when you want to get hugged. You know, I think it's about manners, but it's also about safety. Body
I agree.
safety. Because we mix children up. I think we don't do it on purpose, but we tell them, you know, your body's your own, it's private, but then when the relatives come...
And sometimes those are strangers to some of our kids.
And they are strangers because, especially for young kids, they don't remember them very well at all, even if they've met a year ago. So,
I think that's a great suggestion, as you said, not just to say, you know, I think it's great setting expectations with the adults, but it's a good reminder that we can set expectations with the kids and help them to understand, you know, have that empathy or that understanding of another person and say, Grandma really loves you, and this is how she shows love. And if, you know, if you're not comfortable with that, what can you think of? What would you feel comfortable doing? And give them, again, that healthy amount of control and power, and help them to be aware of other people's feelings. How can you show her that you love her too because she loves you so much? It's like just great advice. What else can you tell us about your new book? Do you have a title for it yet, or working title? Yeah. Is it an extension of this book, it sounds like?
Yeah, it's definitely a sequel. It includes some of the chapters that were cut from the first book, and it does cover the preschool age, but it also goes into that really crucial kindergarten time and the entry to school and up into the elementary years. So it covers a broader range of ages. I would say maybe age 3 to 10, 3 to 11. It has a lot of school issues in it, and it has recess. It has ways to advocate for your child, because a lot of schools don't have recess anymore or are cutting it way back. It has a lot about homework, because homework, it's a divisive issue for a lot of families. There's ones that love it, ones that hate it. But in cases where the homework is inappropriate, I actually have a chapter called Ban Elementary Homework. The research is showing it doesn't help academically, and it hurts kids' interest in school at the elementary level. But kids are getting homework at age 5. Mm-hmm. And some of them are getting quite a lot, and they dissolve in tears, and they have stomach aches and all kinds of things. So there's a lot that our culture is asking of kids. Talk about expectations. It's inappropriate developmentally. And for the parents, we get a little stuck in the middle because we want to support these teachers who we respect and who would work very hard. And some of us are teachers ourselves. But at the same time, we want to do what's best for our child. And when our kid is showing these signs of stress, how do you bridge the gap between the family play-based and how you respectfully parent and what the school's doing? And how do you do that as partners? So there's a lot in the book about that, and screens and technology use. So,
oh, I'm so excited. It sounds so great. And I love, as you were talking about that homework section, I know you've written a post on it that when I shared it on Facebook, it really went crazy. People were, I know there's an audience out there for that. Just like you said, I think you frame it so perfectly that it's not an us versus them, but it's how do we find this balance and, like you said, support teachers and support learning, but also do it from a perspective that is developmentally appropriate and respectful of our children. And I know I've been really lucky to have teachers in schools that have been quite respectful in this area, and I've heard from people who have some schools that really struggle with that appropriateness. And I think there's a lot of confusion about what rigor really means in elementary and in early childhood. And it was a discussion I had when we moved to this new area. It was a discussion I had with the principal, and I loved her perspective on it, and it's great. I will vouch and say there are teachers and administrators who do get it, but like you said, there are a lot of families that get caught in the middle when there's that misunderstanding. So I'm looking forward to that very much, to your book. I'm so excited. Do you have an estimated release date yet, or is that still too far out to put a date on it?
It should be coming out in the fall, so 2015 fall. And as for a title, I'm not quite sure, but a working title is It's Okay to Go Up the Slide.
Oh, I like that. That's a whole other discussion that I've had before with our kids. Well, thank you so much, Heather. It's been such a joy to read your book, to discuss your book, to be able to hear it straight from you and to talk about it. It's such a pleasure. Really appreciate it. For those of you that are just joining us now, I'll have some links that will let you go back to see all of the discussions that I've had with Heather, as well as with other bloggers that have joined in with the discussion with us, and to preview some of the book. But I would really strongly suggest that you get the book, read it. Heather did a wonderful job writing it, but also organizing it so that you can read sections independently or the whole thing as an entire book. Get started so that you're ready for her next book in the fall. So thank you, Heather, so much. We hopefully will have some more discussions in the future. Best of luck with this new book and this holiday season. Thank you, everybody, for watching. I'm Amanda Morgan from NotJustCute.com. Thanks.